TV, documentaries, movies, and to TV shows, and to get the kinds of news articles we want written to be written for TV and on the air. So let's give one more round of applause for Roger. And so, like I mentioned real quick, this is going to be a bit more workshop-y. So while he's talking, he's only going to be talking for a few minutes. While he's talking, we want you to write down one project that you want advice on, whether it's a law, a creative idea for a storyline for a TV show, a news item, or a documentary. So please think about your ideas, write it down, and then after he speaks for a little bit, then we will dive into some of those ideas. So give it up one more time for Roger.
Thank you, John. So I know that my bio can take a little while to get through. The one thing that John left out that I just think is important to point out for this group is that also I've written for 5 major TV shows, and I've sold 12 series of my own, and just right before the writer's strike, sold my first feature film, and delivered it on time, so it actually might get produced during the strike, and I won't even be able to be on set. But I hope that you're all supporting SAG and the WGA, little plug there. So what I really want to talk about are trade secrets. And the things that I'm going to talk about today have actual financial value, and I don't take them lightly. But there isn't a person in this room, even though I don't necessarily know all of you yet, I know why you're here. You and I and John share the same values. And I want every single one of you to succeed. And I'll give you every last bit of support I can to happen. So one more thing I just want to say is that I've spent all my careers looking for a silver bullet issue. This is the silver bullet issue. It used to be education. I was formerly Chief Education Counsel of the Democratic Party in the Senate. And I thought that if you could really improve everybody's education, you could really save the world. I now realized, and one of the reasons I became a writer is I realized that values are what really matter. And that isn't necessarily taught in the classroom. That's taught on screens like this. That's why I went into Los Angeles. But the values I want to get out there are ours. So, to start with, an effective pitch for any law, if you want to make a law, if you're dealing with a legislator, an effective pitch for any TV show or any movie, or if you're going to an existing TV show that happens to be your favorite and you're like, I really want us to talk about, you guys do a storyline about this. That effective pitch, all of them have the same requirements. And I'm going to run over them. So the first is stakes. Whenever you're pitching anything, it has to be important on some level. Now, when it comes to the entertainment industry, you're like, well, sometimes there's romance stories. What are the stakes there? Well, the stakes when it comes to love are life and death together, because it feels like life or death. And when it comes to pitching anything that you want to pitch, and by the way, is this microphone working well, or should I? Okay. You want to figure out what the stakes are, why what you're doing matters. The next is whatever you're pitching needs to have currency. It needs to have freshness. Very often people sort of first idea that comes to their head, and they don't necessarily cultivate that idea by going and talking to a lot of people about it and really running it up the flagpole before they go out with it. And so you see a lot of very well-meaning people, many of us in the room have been that person, who are out there with an idea that isn't really fresh. It's kind of it's reductive, and it's not going to grab attention. Every pitch for anything you want to do should feel like that's brand new, that's in the zeitgeist. The next thing is you want to have story. You want whatever you pitch to tell some sort of a heroic journey. Like the Brady Bill is a classic example. One of the only things that's even passed in the area of law related to gun protection. It was passed because of the story of Brady, who was shot in the head while he was standing next to Ronald Reagan. He was the press secretary. That story resonated for people. That was the only way that a law like that could ever pass. It needed a story behind it. Next is a personal connection to you. So whatever you're pitching should relate to you, and not in a general way. Like, oh God, I'm a writer. And one of the things I hate when people come to meet with me because they want to network or they want me to mentor them, they always start with, well, I love story. And I almost want to puke. Oh, really? That makes you so unusual. You love story. Oh my God, I wish I loved, it just gets ridiculous. Generic doesn't work. I want to know specifically. I want to know what story changed or saved your life. I want to know why this particular idea that you're pitching feels like it saved your life or will save other lives. I want to know why it matters to you. The next is emotion. If you're pitching anything, you need to involve and engage emotions. And here's the simple trick, and I shouldn't give it to you because it's very valuable. I always started off when I work with speech, and I'm a speechwriter for a lot of people in the Biden administration, and I always start off with this. When you're giving a speech, if you're not having an emotional experience yourself, telling the story you're telling, the audience can't. So the goal isn't to try and figure out what's going to move the audience. The goal is to figure out what's going to move you. And people will pick up on that. The next is branding. So the branding goes in two ways. You want to be expanding your own personal brand. It's got to be aligned with you so it makes sense. And second of all, whoever you're pitching it to, it has to feel like it belongs in their brand as well. So when I go out with a TV show, I alter it when I pitch HBO versus Netflix. Because I'm changing it, but no matter what, it's still my brand. It still fits me and it fits them, so people feel like, oh, the pieces come together. The next and the last thing is sweat equity. So whenever I pitch something, and whenever you pitch something, never go in there asking someone for help. You're there to help them. You're there to help them, and you prove that because you've already done the work. You understand what their job is. You understand what they're looking for. You've done some research about the person that you're meeting with. You know a little bit about their story, and never, by the way, go for their biggest credit, in life. Like, you don't go to Adam Schiff and you talk about, oh, you know Donald Trump so well. You go to Adam Schiff and you talk to Adam Schiff about something that he did years ago that no one talks about, and now Adam Schiff loves you, in as much as Adam Schiff can. And I love Adam Schiff. I'm just making a joke. So you wanted, and then if you're pitching a story, so like if we're talking about a news story you want to get out, I right now have 2 storylines that are in development, one at the Washington Post and one at the New York Times, that I, just as a citizen activist, I began starting. And I did it by understanding the journalists I was working with and doing most of the work for them so that it's easy. All they have to do, I didn't write it for them, although I certainly implied that I could. But I did all the research and I did all the thinking about what their editors are looking for so that when they see it, they're like, this is a no-brainer. That's how you get news made. Okay, last thing is, in terms of developing all these things I just mentioned, I recommend you develop for yourselves, if you don't already, a brain trust. A group of people that you go to run ideas by, to make sure that it really works, because you want people to get excited. People who you pitch an idea to before you go to the buyer, whoever the buyer is, if you're talking to people and they're not excited about it, if they're not like, because your friends are always going to say, oh, I like that idea. But you want them to be like, oh my God, how do I get in? That's terrific. You want to get to that level. Now, this is another little trade secret. I have a brain trust. It has 2 different categories: the people who like me and the people who don't. The people who don't like me are more valuable than the people who do. Because the people who like me are going to say nice things, and they're probably not going to poke a hole that needs to be poked right through the heart of my idea. But the people who don't like me, they want to shoot me down just to see me bleed. And I love them. They're some of my best friends. Because they save my butt. Because I pitch it to them and they go, oh, that wouldn't work. This, that, the other thing. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And I change it and improve it. And I sell it. So do that too. If you raise the bar for yourself, you will clear that bar. But you can't clear the bar unless you raise it. Okay, so that's all that I really want to talk about. Well, I guess one last thing is to understand that in any of these processes, the creative process itself is all about understanding the 2 hemispheres of your brain and learning how to make friends with both. The left one, as you know, is your organizational structure and your logic, but it's also your critic. It will shut you down. The right brain's your moneymaker. That's your genius. Learn how to work your right brain and only your right brain Use that one first, then involve your left brain. So many people end up with writer's block. I just met an attorney from Canada who said, I don't have a creative bone in my body. I think she's probably around here. Yeah, and I'm like, I bet you do. You do have a creative bone, you know, and you probably just shut it down. And all I needed to know when you said that you don't have a creative bone was that you were a lawyer. You have your left brain. You know, but the best lawyers know how to use the right too, and I know you know how to do that. So let's see what the idea, I can't wait, it may not happen today, I don't want to put you on the spot, I can't wait to see the idea that you've got. And you're going to be like, well, I don't know if it's any good. And you're going to say it and I'm going to be like, holy shit. See, I dropped the mic for that one, so. All right, anyway, so if you can all, I hope that what you've thought now is you've thought of an idea for law, TV show, movie, documentary, anything that you're interested in moving forward. And can you raise your hand if you've got one that you want to talk about with the room? Okay, so 1, 2, okay, hopefully it'll be more than that. But I think then if it's only right now, it's like 6 people raising their hand, I don't think I need to go to all 6 of you right away and then come back to you. Why don't we just take the first one? So raise your hand again, please. Okay, I'm gonna take the one of you in the back with the camera. Stand up first if you want.
My name is Andrew Alexander. I'm filming a documentary called Vegan World, and I've interviewed 150 leaders in the vegan movement, and I want to get non-active vegans to take action, and active vegans to be more strategic, so we can create vegan world faster.
So tell us again what the short summary is.
So basically, instead of fighting against the systems, whether it's social, economic, or political, how we can leverage those systems and be more effective and reach exponential growth for the vegan.
And why did you pick this idea?
I was a non-active vegan for 3 years, and I felt socially isolated from all my non-vegan friends that I surrounded myself with.
Why were you non-active?
I didn't want to be pushy, and I just, the judgment came my way.
What were you afraid of?
Criticism or isolation or standing out.
And is there some other aspect of your life, earlier in your life, when you really paid a price for standing out? Like, were you encouraged to really stand up and be yourself when you were younger, or were your parents like, no, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way?
Encouraged me, the one thing that came to mind is when I was in 7th grade, I dyed my hair like really bright blonde, like Eminem. And remember seeing that I really stood out and people were laughing. So.
All right, so just to use this as an example, everybody, of everything that Andrew just said, what's the part you're going to remember the most? Eminem and that hair, right? Why? Because it's specific. Everything else you said, Andrew, was great, and I'm aligned with you 100%, but it was all general. That was a specific story that made me like you more. And you walked in the room, I liked you. But now I'm like, I'll remember you. I'm like, that's sweet. And I can imagine that kid. Storytelling is all about transporting somebody to a different place in time. And the only way that someone can effectively be transported to a different place in time is if you can engage their senses. Right? So what did he engage? My visual sense. I can picture that kid. And when I picture that kid, my heart goes out to him. When I was a freshman in college, and I've never admitted this in public before, I went to college with a mustache. Now, you've got a great goatee over there. I'm looking at you when I said that. The mustache did not look good on me. Hugely embarrassed. I can't believe the whole freshman year. That's how I introduced myself to everybody at my college. What was I thinking? But now I can relate to you. Okay, so now I'm emotionally invested and engaged because you've told me that specific. What is it when you want these people to speak up in your documentary? What do you want them to share with? What's the takeaway? What do you want them to give your audience?
What want the viewers to do?
No, what do you want? So when people watch the documentary, what are they going to take away from it?
That there's more effective ways than just traditional one-on-one speaking with people. There's ways to do activism for everybody. And that.
What's the emotion you want them to take away? So let me also, while you're thinking about that, because I'm putting you away on the spot, Andrew. Everything you guys do, I want you to think about what the big emotion is that's attached to it. Now, what's the easiest emotion to access? Fear. Second is probably anger. But there's a whole bunch of other big emotions you can access. Anybody like to be inspired? Yeah. be moved, feel sad. There's all big emotions. You want to start picking the emotion that you want people to walk away from. You know, outrage is a great one. The Brady Bill passed because of outrage. Outrage and empathy. But that was big emotions. There you go. See, that's the back room holding all the overflow, and they really like that line. They're much more responsive than people in this room. You got to catch up to them, okay? So anyway, so what do you want people to walk away having seen the documentary? How do you want them to feel?
Empowered and inspired.
Empowered is great, isn't it? Okay, so then in that case then, I'll just go on a really quick story. Let's see how fast I can tell this, because I don't want to go on too much of a tangent. But years ago, I was talking to a Lubavitch rabbi. That's not the way people start most stories. And he was talking about how he had, for his PhD thesis at Oxford, he had gone around the world and met with the greatest leaders in the world and interviewed them about what made them a great leader. And everybody gave him all sorts of wonderful information and lessons that he was able to apply to his thesis, his dissertation. And then he came to the Lubavitch rabbi, Menachem Schneerson, which is another name you don't always hear. And Menachem Schneerson, he went and he sat down to ask him, Menachem, the same questions he had asked, Gandhi-like people all around the world. And Menachem Schneerson's response was, "Nice question, enough about me. So tell me about you. Did you pray today? And he got into his own territory and started talking about him. And of course, since this is a story, and I picked it because that man ended up the rabbi of England. And he wasn't even an active Jew until he met Menachem Schneerson. And the lesson was, a leader makes leaders of others. So what you could do, Andrew, in your story is, you could go to each one of these people and say, what empowered you? That's your core question. What empowered you? And each person is going to, and everyone in this room has a radically different story about what empowered them. But each story, I'm positive, would be probably much more interesting than even what I'm saying now. So it's like, that is the thread. If you know what your mission is, if you know what your goal is, then actually build it out, and it will build on itself. It will be that much more effective. Is that helpful, Andrew?
I've been struggling with this question for 6 months, and in your 3 questions, I have an answer. So very
All right. Okay, that's all the time we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. All right, who's next? All right, I'm going to just go right here because he raised his hand, but not because I favor the front. Go ahead. You want the microphone?
Yeah, why not? Thanks. Hey, my name is Thomas. I work for Animal Society. It's a German NGO. What we work for is... Thanks. What we work for is for a multi-species democracy. So we work every day to strengthen the political representation of animals. Animals are de facto affected by political decisions, so they must be represented in our democracies. We want to include them in democracy step by step.
So I'm going to actually need the microphone because I might interrupt you. So what is the project, like what do you want help on?
Yeah, I think even within the movement it's quite...
And can you guys in the back just move a little bit forward just in case other people come in? There's one up here, there's one over there. So go ahead, sorry.
We really need to explain that animals are political agents and not only moral passions, and that they thus must be integrated into our democracy. And even within the movement, I think this is not really understood well, and it's quite challenging for us to explain it and to spread it. It's something quite abstract and maybe visionary, so we feel that...
Tell me your first name again?
Thomas.
Thomas. I think we can all just take a second and thank Thomas for doing this in Germany, which eats a lot of meat. So thank you, Thomas. So here's my question for you. Why are you doing this? Why does this matter to you?
I've been active in the movement for 15 years, and I really feel that we are begging for crumbs and pieces of bread, and I think we really...
What was the moment that made you an activist? What was the moment, Thomas, that made you an activist?
When I realized that so little is being done for the animals.
What was the moment, though? Like, where were you? Like, I remember the night that I became a vegan. I had some friends who came over to my house. I'd already been a vegetarian since college. And it was my friend Braden Pollock, who's married to Lisa Bloom. Some of you in this room may know them. But Braden just said to me, why are you a vegetarian, not a vegan? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I guess why? Because I want to have protein, so I kind of need more milk or something. He said, Roger, don't you know milk is pus? The conversation got even grosser as it went on. But I remember it very distinctly. And I remember just like, oh my God, like, why am I not vegan? And it was just done. Like, it was done in that moment. But now you see what I've done in telling that story. I've taken you to a moment in time. I've mentioned some names and specifics that might be familiar to the room, right? And I've mentioned the word pus, which people will remember. Thomas, what was that moment for you?
I think when I was first time on the streets for animals demonstrating.
Okay, so that's another example of a general. Come on in a little bit more if you guys can. That's also, again, general. And you can always tell, and remember this because you're going to do this with your friends and with yourself. When I was on the streets, no. What street? Day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Specifics. Because you're telling a story, all right? And you're transporting the room, because it's magic. Speeches are magic. Because everyone is willingly giving you their mind, and they want to be transported someplace. So it's your job now to transport us there. What street were you on? What did you see? You know, what were you wearing that day? What made this day different from any other? And I don't want to put you too much on the spot, because it may not have been that. It may have been a more gradual process for you. But there was still that one moment, and if it's not like that moment you discovered it, then it's that moment that you made that first phone call to a friend and said, I want to do this. Or it's that moment that you went to, that you said, I've got this idea called Animal Society. There is a moment in time when this became real to you for an emotional reason. Now, when you're advocating in Germany to people about your cause and you're trying to get them to take animals seriously, not as objects, but as living, breathing species that are related to us, you want to open with why this matters to you. Because people can always argue your facts, especially in this world. We're in a post-factual society. People can always argue facts with you, and you may not be able to win on the facts, but no one can argue your story. No one can argue your emotions, and no one can even be that offended by it. Now, in this society, people can find a way to be offended, but you make it harder for them. That's your job. So, Thomas, can you think of, can you get me a story right now based on what I'm saying? You can.
I hope so. I'll try. So, like,
Sure.
a very transformative moment for me was the first time I demonstrated for animals. It was in the city center of Paris in 2006 in May, and I attended a demonstration called Veggie Pride, and I had a banner where it was written, "Your butcher is a murderer," and being there on the streets, speaking out for the animals was very transformative.
How did you feel, Thomas? By the way, we're with you. We love Paris. We're there. It's May. People love May. They get, you're doing great. But how did it feel? Like to see, like to be around these people and feel that kind of emotion. How did you feel?
It felt right.
It felt right. What else?
And it felt liberating also for myself.
Right.
From the animals, of course.
Now, are we enrolled in his cause now? Because we become enrolled. What you're doing when you're making a pitch, you're enrolling the person you're pitching to. You want them to be on your side, on your team. You want them to become your advocate. We're becoming your advocate right now, Thomas. Even you had us all already, because you also, just by standing up, it's a vulnerable experience. And my guess is you speak probably 5 languages and we only speak 1. But that's your strength. That's your core. And even when you started telling that story, did you see how he became calmer? He became calmer. And I'm not that calm right now just because of the clock, and I got to get over that. Because I wish I had you guys for the whole day. But that calm is also powerful. And one of the things I just want to say while we're on the subject of power, you know what else is really powerful? Silence. When you're speaking, when you're telling your story, take moments. Take moments to collect. Yeah, the room likes it. Take moments, collect, reflect, who's anybody, you're actually going to draw them in. And one of the real keys is if you hear yourself saying or stuttering, which a lot of us do, it's much better to just be silent for a moment. Okay, anything else you want to say, Thomas? Or okay, terrific. Thank you so much. Applause for Thomas. All right, who's next? Please, I'm pointing to you. Yes, in the pink dress with the pink top. Looked like a dress because I only saw you sitting down.
It is a dress. It could be a dress.
Wonderful. Actually, well, you can do it from there because the microphone back and forth doesn't really work, and you're closer to the center of the room.
Okay.
What's your name?
My name is Karen Olson,
Hey, Karen.
and I have a company called Cat Power Productions, and
Up to you.
I've done PR and marketing for about 100 years in LA, New York, and worked with large companies. Now I focus specifically on vegan. And I have this, I have the domain Plants Not Pills, which a lot of the pop people want. I've had it for and I don't even know, I didn't know what I was going to do with it until just recently.
Plants what pills?
Plants Not Pills.
Plants not pills. It's great, isn't it? Everyone in this room wants it.
Well, it's about, so many people are dying from the meds and pharma, and everybody in this room already knows the story. But I'm very intent on promoting foods that are healing, especially magic mushrooms. It's one of my things. I've never done it. I'm going to do it in the next couple of months. This can make me cry.
Great.
I could go on so hot, I can cry at the thought of this. My mom gets high. And it had her off of all the meds. And we had to do it. And if the magic mushrooms had been available, it's a much better way for end of life, for PTSD, generational trauma, all the things that people are suffering with. And there's no need to recognize it, but I really want to talk to people about how the plant medicines can help. It would help my mom in end of life. My dad died 3 years ago to the minute my mom died. She timed her departure exactly the same day, at the same hour, 3 years later. It's very strange. Anyway, so he had dementia. So there's just so many answers out there and I know it's not been covered with the mushroom topic has been covered. So I want to figure out a way to approach it.
No, you want to figure out a way to approach it.
Well,
Finish that thought.
Well, I want to make it real for people so they can see. Oh, and then the other thing I was going to say, I've also discovered recently that magic mushrooms are actually showing to reverse brain aging scientifically.
So let me ask you a question then. Is there a project? So like what we're trying to focus on are results in this particular conversation. Is there a law, a movie, a documentary, a TV show, a news series? Which of those do you want to talk about?
Well, I was thinking of it as more of like a documentary.
A documentary.
And talking to people about, how it can help and showing people and examples. And
Terrific. All right, so let's first take a real lesson from Karen here. So stay standing for me. There's a lot of perception among women that if they're too emotional, it's going to disempower them when they make a presentation. Was anybody negatively impacted when Karen had an emotional moment? Did anybody feel like she sacrificed any power when she did so? Did everybody feel like they related to her more strongly? Never let anybody tell you emotions are a weakness. Emotions are your power center. Okay? Now, it may feel vulnerable to you, but it's actually a very powerful thing to do. So you've got the personal connection. We know that. Now, just so you all know, I sold a TV series a couple of years ago called Psychedelic. Dave Navarro was one of my producers. And the director of the movie of the TV series Winning Time, Sally Richardson Whitfield, director. I mean, it was really well packaged. It didn't sell. It didn't end up on the air, unfortunately. But I care about this issue too. It is well-trod territory. So what you need to figure out, especially if you haven't done it before, and this is one of my big failings, when I wrote the script for it, I had never done shrooms. I hadn't even done DMT. I have now. But before you do the documentary, have that experience. And see what the impact, because I've done shrooms about 4 times right now, and the 3rd time I did it was the best experience of my life. It was the most amazing connection to source that I've ever felt. And it gave me a reference point for the rest of my life. So you've got the personal connection to it. You don't have the personal experience yet. Get that experience and then see how that reformats what you want to do with it. You know, and then maybe look, the way into your story might be the fact that your parents died 3 years to the minute apart. And it may be about the connection between psychedelics and the hereafter. I haven't seen that one yet. You know, I've seen Michael Pollan, I've read Michael Pollan's book, and there's documentaries about it, and there's Fabulous Fun Guy, but there isn't something that really takes the subject into the direction about life after death.
Right.
I haven't seen that.
Very interesting.
So maybe that's it. Maybe that's your way in.
I'm going to a medium also.
Sounds great to me. You know? All right. Thank you, Karen. That's great. Everyone give Karen a round. Did you? On the floor over there. Let's see what you got.
Okay, I came in a little late, but I think I got
You getting the idea?
to tell a story and make a connection.
Okay, well, just you want to start with, do you have a project you want help on?
Yeah.
Let's start with that. And first, your name.
My name is Brielle Ringer.
Brielle?
Yes,
Hey,
Brielle.
hey, Brielle.
So I support change makers leading with greater ease, joy, and passion by freeing themselves from repressed emotions that end up holding us back and harming our health. So what I'd like to do is do a tour, emotional health and somatic healing tour, and document that about the power of releasing unrepressed emotions and having really deep transformational experiences, especially for people like this in this room who are doing important work for the animals, where we're carrying a lot of stress, a lot of trauma that's held in our bodies that ends up coming out sideways and impacting the way that we advocate on the streets, the way that we interact with our colleagues.
I'm just going to pause you right there for a second. So, Brielle carries her own brand. You have stature, and you're unique, and you're a great speaker, and you're polished. And they love you. The next step up is to make it one level more specific and personal. Let's hear it.
So, my background is in social work. When I was going through undergraduate school about 8 years ago, I was so burnt out that one day when I was leaving one of those 12-hour days that I would have every day of the week, I was so disconnected that I literally drove straight into a pole as I was leaving the parking lot. And my first thought was, as the airbags went off, I don't have time for this. I got grad school applications I'm supposed to be doing. And when I got home, I realized I had a really unhealthy relationship to service and to higher education, and that was not sustainable. That if I actually wanted to make a difference in the world, I have to take care of myself. And so now that I have worked in multiple movements, in social work and housing justice and in animal liberation, it's a theme that I see, that you do really meaningful work, but you abandon yourself in the process. And it doesn't have to be that way. And so I want to make space for you to take really good care of yourself and to release the weight of the world that you've been carrying.
That's fantastic. And a wonderful example of how when you get to the more personal, it gets even better.
Yeah.
Be more specific about the project.
That's the less specific part that I need help on.
Okay, great. So, but I think, I'm trying to remember the details that you said, Brielle. You want to go
Yeah.
on a tour and you want to document it.
I want to do a community healing tour. I want to come to sanctuaries and support your staff. I want to come to events like this. I want to go to your staff retreat. I want to provide space, specifically in person. I already do it online.
Who do you want to help most?
Advocates and change makers.
Okay, but that's still general, right?
Still general,
Is
yeah.
anyone in this room not an advocate or a change maker?
Yeah.
Okay. So get more specific.
Okay.
Because, like, for example, on the list you just said, having been Commissioner of Animal Services for Los Angeles and spent a lot of time in shelters, shelter workers, you could start with that and I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Right.
You know, but that may not be the issue that matters most to you.
Yeah.
What's the category of person that you like this, the job that you're like, oh, I really want to help those people?
Yeah. I don't know what that is yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the next
So that's a
step is to
place to
think
work
about
on.
that.
Yeah.
And then think about why. Okay. So for me, when it comes to shelter workers, when I first became commissioner, I decided to volunteer in the shelters. No commissioner had ever done that, so I thought that'd be a really cool thing to do. And it was horrifying. It was horrible. It was so stressful, and I was so mistreated. Even though some people knew that I was commissioner, it was really awful. And I realized that every single employee there that was treating me poorly was suffering from PTSD. And I learned, and it was hard to do, but I learned to care about the people who were treating me like dirt. And I learned to get over the fact that there was a war in Los Angeles. I don't know how many of you know, but there's a war between the staff and the volunteers. A friggin' war. But it makes sense because they're in a battle zone to begin with. That's why I care.
Yeah.
Whatever you care about is going to be deeper than that and more powerful. And then you're going to bring that incredible energy that you have, that healing energy, and that's going to be transformative. But when you can really figure out what you care about most and focus on that thing, that's when you'll be the most powerful in your storytelling.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bria. All right, who's next? Oh, Bria, can we grab your microphone and?
Yes, where's it going?
You can, I'm going to talk about time in a second. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Susan Hargreaves, and when I was 9 years old, I was taken into a chicken hatchery because my Aunt Alwyn in Hebden Bridge, West Yorkshire, knew that I loved animals. So she said, come into work with me today. She was the receptionist, and you can see all the little chicks. So off I went as 9 years old she said, just go through that door there. And I went into a big warehouse where there was these drums with hoses. And I went over to the drums and I saw the conveyor belts. And there were all the little male chicks being gassed and suffocated, crawling out from the other bodies of the other chicks. Some were dead, some were still alive, some were trying to figure out what was happening.
Susan, I'm just going to interrupt you in the sense of, can you just start by saying what type of project you want help on?
So I founded an education empowerment organization, and I've been active since 1980. And currently we have a documentary that's original short, called The Heart Whisperer, which documents over the years what I have done to help animals and how animals are really being treated to reach people that aren't vegan already. Now it's 16 minutes and it's playing here Saturday night at 8 p.m. And Sean Munson is the filmmaker. He'll be here for the Q&A. But
everybody knows Sean? Raise your hand if you know Sean. Love the guy.
Yes. And so he'll be here for the Q&A. But my challenge is this. I want to reach the pre-vegans in the largest way possible. So there's two choices I have to take with projects and run with it and put money towards it and actually have funding for a billboard. So it's either going to be The Heart Whisperer and try to get feature, or the book that I wrote, which is the world's first vegan superheroes, and it's a trifecta, and it's
one project at a time, if you don't mind, Susan.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So I'm trying to choose between which project to run with.
Okay. So briefly tell us about.
Okay, the Veganza Superheroes. It's Veganza Animal Heroes, and the characters are vegan superheroes that are actually rescuing animals. And I found that when we put out messages, because the heroes come to life, and we actually...
And this is already created?
It's my book, Veganza Animal Heroes. It's a graphic novel. And it's been on a world tour. It was on the front page of the Dublin News. But the challenge is, how can I get it into like a feature, action-adventure film?
Okay, so thank you, Susan. And everybody, let's give her a round.
Thank you.
Now, this is a good illustration of, let's start with Susan's story. When she was talking about seeing the male chickens be slaughtered. It's great storytelling. It works in this room, and thank you for sharing it, and thank you for reminding us of why we're here. It doesn't work with non-vegans. And one of the reasons is that what we've learned, what I'm trying to teach today is, I actually don't want to hear the story about them. I want to hear about your reaction. I want to hear about you. Because I can like shut down the chickens because I don't want to know. By the way, you know, as everyone in this room knows, we're a chicken eating country, not a meat eating country. Chickens are the issue, you know, even more than red meat. But I want to know why you cared. And I want to hear about it in a way so I don't feel crap. You know, I want to be invited into the story in the same way that we did with Thomas, you know, and I want to be in there and not be like necessarily grossed out.
Yeah.
But I want to just hear, you know, and you don't even need the details. You just need, I was a little girl. I went in and saw what happens to chickens, and I'm not going to go there because you probably already know.
Right.
But I just thought, you know, wow, they're so cute, you know, and I wanted one. And I found myself chasing after them as they were going down the conveyor belt, and I couldn't run fast enough. That moment's going to give people the chills. And it doesn't involve even mentioning death.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So in the creation of the movie, and Sean, you know, for all of you know, Sean did the movie Earthling. So he did one of the first documentaries. Sean is a very good friend. He and I have sat many times talking about what could be our vegan TV show. It's not easy. You know, the idea that you came up with for the superheroes, it's a clever idea. It's a very clever idea. But if you'd come to someone like me earlier on, I would have said it's too on the nose, and you're going to have a hard time. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
What does that mean?
On the nose means it's wearing your heart on your sleeve. It's saying they're vegan people going after farm animals.
Right, right.
You know, what you want to be able to do is, oh, yes, thank you. Well, can I ask you a question? Can I ask the room if they can stay over a few minutes, or do you need me to stop?
Yes, this room needs to be reset for 5 people to 7 for a lunch session, and then the public will do that.
Ah, okay. All right, because I was hoping that we could go over a little bit. I was going to ask you all if that was all right, but it sounds like we can't. So can we have like 3 more minutes, or do you need me to stop now?
3 more minutes.
Okay.
And then you want to hang out there?
Yeah, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'll go over there and I'll take as many questions. I'm also going to do something that you're not supposed to do in the entertainment industry. I'm going to give all of you my email address.
Oh.
And if any of you want to follow up, if you can't catch me now, it's rogerwolfson@me.com. This is my first and last name at me.com. But please, when you reach out to me, remind me who you are, because my memory isn't that great. But Susan, it's a great idea. It's just what we do is talk to somebody about the sky. Like, for example, Avatar is a pro-animal. The first one is an environmental movie.
Yeah.
But a lot of people aren't fully conscious of that because he found a metaphor that could, James Cameron found a metaphor that could convey it. And it was successful. Avatar 2 wasn't as successful. Why? Whales. Now, I love whales. I care about them immensely. But doing whales for a long time. It was too obvious. He was revealing his value structure too soon. Instead of first collecting me, getting me involved, enrolling me first with a great story, and then, you know, like, for example, James Gunn in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I also know James. But, you know, James maybe went a little bit over the top with some of the animal rights stuff, but no one was expecting animal rights, and they got animal rights, and that was because, you know, he cares. So it's about being cagey. It's about building that brain trust. My guess is if you had a brain trust of people and half of them didn't like you, they would probably have, the project would have been even better than it is. And that's not saying it's not great.
That's good. That's good.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so I think we got to wrap up, otherwise we're going to get thrown out. Everybody,
Thank
you so much. And I'll be right out there. Yeah, someone talk to you.
First and last.
I'm probably going to wait in the hallway.
Okay, stop.
Jeffrey.